got the chief executive of a major company who has sacked 800 workers via video call, admitting that they knowingly broke the law and that they would do it again. As the Transport Secretary, what is it that you're going to do about it?
Well, first of all, I thought what the boss of P&O said yesterday about knowingly breaking the law was brazen and breathtaking, showed incredible arrogance, and I cannot believe that he can stay in that role, having admitted to deliberately go out and use a loophole, break the law, but also use a loophole. And that's the thing. What they did was they flagged their ships through Cyprus, avoided having to tell anybody about this, or they felt they did. And even though they know they've broken the law, what they've done is to pay people off in such a way to try and buy their silence. It's unacceptable. So what I'm going to do about it is come to Parliament this coming week with a package of measures which will both close every possible loophole that exists and force them to U-turn on this. We are not having people working from British ports on applying regular routes between here and France or here and Holland or where else, and failing to pay the minimum wage. It's simply unacceptable, and we will force that to change.
So just to be clear then, you said earlier on you cannot believe that he's still in his role, so you're calling for him to leave then? You think he should go right now?
Yes.
OK, that's well noted there. And also, let's just talk about some of the other issues here. We all know that this is unacceptable, and you've touched on that there. You said, you know, in terms of the law, to make sure that the loophole that P&O exploited isn't exploited by other people. So one of the questions that many people will be thinking about, including those 800 workers and their family members, of course, who rely on them, is that how can it be that we have a company which actually operates from ports like Dover and Cairn Ryan? How can it be that they can avoid paying workers less than the minimum wage? Because they do operate around British ports. So how is that possible?
Yeah, well, what everyone says who looks at this, including the lawyers, is international maritime law combined with national laws is an incredibly complex area. And up until now, it's been thought that that wasn't something that they could go and do. What they've done, quite mischievously, is to register their ships through a Cyprus flag and therefore avoid and evade the need to inform anybody about what they were doing, as the boss of P&O openly admitted to Parliament yesterday, the most extraordinary testimonial to the select committees. What they did was know that they were breaking the law and deliberately set out to break the law, but effectively pay people off for their silence. We can't have a situation where the minimum wage exists onshore, but as soon as you're offshore, and particularly where you're within our economic zone, that's 12 miles within the offshore of the UK, and that's the regular route you take, we can't have a situation where those people aren't covered by British laws on things like minimum wage and overseas cheap labour is exploited on those routes. It's not right. It's not fair. In fairness to P&O, in fairness, I can't think of anything fair at all about what they've done. But what they have done is actually copied what Irish ferries had already done. And of course, there's then the danger that other operators, there's Stena, there's DFDS, might feel that they have to do the same. The package that I'm bringing forward will make it absolutely clear that would be unacceptable. They won't be able to operate from British ports if they do, and will require a U-turn on what's happened at P&O as well, and will enforce that with the law.
So specifically, you'll make them pay the minimum wage and you change the law to ensure that?
Correct. That's exactly the plan. It's quite complex, as has been revealed the last couple of weeks, because it's not a single law. It's a combination of different laws working together and different practices.
Can you simplify it for us then? Can you simplify it for us? Can you tell us exactly when you plan on changing this law, and just tell us how you're going to do it in a very simple form, if you can?
I'm going to need to make that actual announcement to Parliament first. But to give you an idea, there are measures that we can take immediately with regard to the way that ports operate instructions to ports. Some ports are what are called trust ports, for example, and have a different status, and we'd have a bit more control. So there are things that we can do immediately, and are already underway. There are things which require what's called secondary legislation. That's legislation which can again be passed in relatively quick time. And then there are things which are done through primary legislation that normally takes longer. But I've already spoken to my opposite number in the House of Commons in order to try and build a consensus around this. And I'm pretty sure that members of Parliament feel the same about this. I think what's happened is absolutely disgraceful, and we intend to make sure that not only is that route blocked, but actually P&O will have to U-turn on all of this as well.
And when will you be making that announcement to Parliament?
Next week, and it's a comprehensive package which contains 7 or 8 different steps that we'll be taking, 8 steps actually.
And when are you hoping that the new law will come into force?
Well, as I say, there's a series of different things which interlink and overlap. And because we're dealing in part with international maritime law, as well as, for example, national minimum wage law, as well as port law and much else, it essentially ratchets up with every different step that we take. So my message to P&O is simple. Their wheezes are not going to work. We are going to legally require them to go back on it. They might as well start on that now. And if they haven't got the right leadership there to do it at the moment, and I think yesterday we saw through that brazen, breathtaking arrogance that they don't, then they will probably need to think about sorting that out first.
Mr. Shapps, can you guarantee that those 800 workers will get to keep their jobs? What is it that you're doing to help them?
I don't know that it will be those 800 workers specifically. Many of them have or are in the process of accepting what was simply a huge payoff from, or a big payoff from P&O. And P&O admitted this is the extraordinary thing about it. They said, we know we're breaking the law, but don't worry, we're paying them off to not essentially come after us for breaking the law. I actually know that, and I was contacted the same day, which was last Thursday, about this by other blue chip bosses, and I know they've gone down and actually snapped up those employees who, hardworking people who've spent years in many cases with P&O, very attractive in a very tight labour market where unemployment is 3.9%. Those people have been snapped up, so I suspect they'll probably have to employ others. The whole thing is going to end up costing P&O a lot more money because of the way they've gone about this. Not only will they end up paying redundancy, I suspect they'll have to end up paying people to come and work for them again. And actually, they've got a lot of reputation rebuilding to do as well. So I think everything about this, the way they've gone about this, has been hugely regrettable. We won't let the situation stand, as the Prime Minister said at the dispatch box on Wednesday, and next week we'll have a package of measures which makes it absolutely clear.
Minister,
but they can consider themselves on notice on this.
Minister, just to be clear, when did you become aware of the crisis at P&O? When did you first become aware of it?
I was actually stood at the dispatch box on Thursday when news started to come out about it, because I happened to have oral questions. For completeness, I should say that the night before, I was informed by my office that there'd be another round of redundancies at P&O, but P&O have made redundancies in the normal way in the past, including particularly during coronavirus. And so that in itself, whilst obviously really unfortunate, if they'd gone through the normal consultation process, worked with the workers, worked with the unions, we wouldn't be sitting here where we are today. Although, as I say, actually, it would still not be acceptable for them to be replacing people with people not being paid the minimum wage. So we still would have a problem if that were the case.
Well, the Chief Executive yesterday said that actually you were made aware about this in November. Are you saying that he's lying?
Well, I've sent the note, actually, from the meeting in November, which was with the parent company, DP World, when I was at World Expo, where they simply said the competition's very tough, the conditions are very tight. Well, we knew all that because of coronavirus, and they'll be looking at the shape of their business. And I've actually sent the formal civil service note of that meeting. I think we can all see that what they're trying to do is distract attention. The fact of the matter is that they needed to give 45 days notice to ministers, in fact, to the Secretary of State for Business, if you're making these kind of redundancies. They did not do that. They did not provide the notice. They are using a weasel approach by saying, well, it's flagged to the Cyprus flag, so therefore those are the ministers we'd have to inform. By the way, they didn't inform them with 45 days' notice either, and they're simply saying, we don't care that we broke the law, we did it deliberately, and we're just going to pay people off for their silence. And none of that is acceptable, I'm afraid.
So that's very clear then. You're calling for that chief exec to go, and you're also, as you've stated here, you're going to be changing the law to protect those workers and also to ensure that that loophole which P&O exploited is actually closed. Now, Minister, let's just talk about some of the main issues that you're also here to discuss. You're here to talk about the infrastructure of electric cars and also improvements to technologies such as the apps and charge points. Can you just update us on some of the changes that you've brought in?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing huge numbers of cars with plugs on the end, electric cars being sold in this country, perhaps 1 in 4, 1 in 5 right now. And so the infrastructure to charge them needs to match it. We do actually already have the most rapid chargers of any Western country, but we want to go a lot further. There are about 30,000 right now, chargers, public chargers. We want that to go up by 10 times to 300,000. Today, we're announcing an enormous fund to help that happen, but not just increase the number of chargers, also make it easier to charge. Anyone who's got an electric car, I've driven one for the last 3 years nearly, knows that it's too hassly if you turn up at a charging station and you have to start having membership cards and downloading apps. We're actually legislating to make all the more fast chargers use contactless payment, so people can just tap their credit card or tap their phone and they've paid for it. So a lot more convenience, a lot more uptime because we're forcing the data to be shared, and really for the consumer, for the motorist, make this a really much less painful switch.